A cordial greeting. Today is Sunday, July 16, 2023. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia speaking. In this video, I would like to provide an update on the forecast related to a strong tropical wave that will be emerging from the region of Africa this week. Some models show the possibility of some type of cyclonic development over the next 10 days as it moves northwestward over the tropical Atlantic. We will be discussing the atmospheric conditions in this area to determine the likelihood of tropical cyclone formation. Additionally, we will be looking at what the best global models indicate in terms of intensity and trajectory of this potential future cyclone. Briefly, I wanted to mention that during this weekend, the subtropical storm Don formed to the north over the waters of the Atlantic. It is the fifth storm of this hurricane season, but fortunately, it has remained over the Atlantic waters, and at the moment, it is not expected to affect any land areas. In the past 24 hours, it has weakened a bit and is currently a subtropical depression, but it is forecasted to re-intensify into subtropical storm Don. Its trajectory will stay far from any land areas. Now, let's talk about the area we will be monitoring in the coming days. This is the area I have mentioned for several days that we will be keeping an eye on towards the end of July. Let's review that after the passage of Tropical Storm Brett and Tropical Storm Cindy, we have seen a break in cyclonic activity. This is due to unfavorable atmospheric conditions for cyclone formation. In this graph, we can see the dominant yellow and orange colors over the Caribbean and the Atlantic, indicating unfavorable conditions for the formation of tropical cyclones. However, cyclonic activity has been focusing in the Pacific region, as is typical during El Niño years. As I mentioned in the last video, an Kelvin wave is expected to cross the Atlantic region over the next 7 to 10 days. This could lead to better conditions for cyclonic formation starting from July 20th. That's why we are paying close attention to this region between the Caribbean and Africa. I also want to mention that another Kelvin wave will move across the Atlantic in early August. Therefore, it's possible that in the first half of August, we will also see some possibilities of cyclone formation in the Atlantic. Then, a strong phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation could be arriving towards the end of August. However, let's focus on the effects of the passage of this first Kelvin wave that will reach the Atlantic starting from July 20th and the reason why the models are indicating better conditions for the formation of a tropical cyclone. For example, here we have the ensemble forecast from the GFS model. Some of them develop a tropical storm between the Caribbean and Africa over the next 7 to 10 days. Similarly, the ensemble members of the European model also show the development of a tropical storm over the next 10 days. Although, at the moment, the National Hurricane Center has not designated this area as an area of interest for cyclonic development. They will likely mark it during the middle of this week if this forecast continues in the best global models. We will be attentive to see the opinion of the National Hurricane Center, and I must mention that the reason we are monitoring this area so early in the season is that sea surface temperatures are at record levels for this time and much warmer than normal in this Atlantic region. As you can see in this graph, temperatures are 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above normal. This is the most important factor for anticipating a more active hurricane season than usual, despite the presence of El Niño. If we look at climatology, typically during July, this area does not see cyclonic activity except for the zone east of the Lesser Antilles and south of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, where cyclone formation is observed in some years. However, it is quite atypical to see the formation of a tropical cyclone between the Caribbean and Africa during July. Climatology is an important factor and definitely indicates that cyclonic formation in this area during July will be difficult to occur. I also wanted to mention that the possible cyclonic formation will be associated with a strong tropical wave that will be emerging from Africa during the middle of this week. It will be associated with the active African monsoon trough to the west of Africa. Typically, the development of cyclones in this circulation is slow and difficult to achieve. Here, we can see in the projection from the American model, the GFS, for next Thursday, that there is a broad circulation near the Cape Verde Islands, and it also forecasts several low-pressure systems competing to see which one develops. This broad circulation also tends to favor the entry of dry air from the subtropical region. Dry air will be a limiting factor for this development, as shown in the next image, where the GFS model for the next weekend depicts a low-pressure system with a significant amount of dry air surrounding it. This dry air must also be one of the main impediments for the rapid formation and development associated with that upcoming tropical wave. Another important factor is that when this low-pressure system approaches the Caribbean region, it will likely encounter shear winds from the southwest. This is typical during the El Niño phenomenon. As shown in this graph, strong shear winds are expected in the Caribbean between Thursday and Friday, which will also hinder the formation of this cyclone or, in case a system forms, it will hinder its potential for strengthening. In some cases, shear winds can decrease significantly for a short period of time, and that's when these disturbances could encounter favorable conditions for strengthening an organization. This is precisely what the GFS model shows. By the beginning of next week, you can see that there is a low shear wind zone covering a large part of the region north of the Caribbean Sea. If this forecast holds true, these are favorable conditions for any disturbance moving through this area to strengthen near Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and the islands of the Bahamas. However, this is a long-term forecast, so we will see many changes in the coming days. It is definitely a pattern that we will be closely monitoring throughout this week. That's why some models even show a potentially strong system that could potentially move north of the Caribbean Sea, as reflected in the latest run of the GFS model. The GFS has a strong tropical storm moving just north of the Greater Antilles. However, this is a long-term forecast, and at the moment, it is impossible to know if we will have cyclonic formation, let alone the trajectory it could take. There is a possibility that it will pass northeast of the Caribbean or even take a more westerly track. However, we should not worry because we have many days to observe this area, and there is currently no imminent risk. This forecast has high uncertainty, and here at Hurricane Info, I will continue to be attentive to provide information on the evolution of this forecast. For now, there is nothing to be concerned about. I will record a video once we have more information and if we see significant changes in the forecast. I hope everyone has an excellent week. Until then, take care.